Love podcasts, hate nonsense. It's the PoliticsJOE podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Come on. Drop the f***ing hammer.
Give it up for PMQs.
It's PMQs time. Favourite time of the week. Yeah.
Who's that off at?
It's me.
Okay.
Self-directed. Well, Ava Santina, political correspondent at PoliticsJOE, is with us. Ava, how are you?
Oh my! I'm before Ed today.
You are before Ed today.
So exciting.
Silverboy.
PoliticsJOE Silver Boy, Ed Campbell, how are you?
Hey, bitter.
Bronze, pewter. Cheers.
Cheers.
Good to see you. Cheers. Good
Cheers.
to see you. What a great session of PMQs we're about to digest. Should we get straight into it?
Yeah.
Roll the clip.
Mr. Speaker, all across the country, people are worried about their bills, the price of the weekly shop, and the spiralling mortgage rates. So why has the Tory party spent this last week arguing over which of them gets a peerage?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, my points on this are very clear. In line with a long-established convention of previous Prime Ministers having the ability to submit honours, I followed the process to the letter in convention with long-standing process. It is, by the way, Mr. Speaker, a long-standing convention that Prime Ministers on both sides of this House have followed in the same way that I did.
Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, the truth is, for all his tough talk after the event, the Prime Minister did sign off the honours list. Yeah. And that means, Mr. Speaker, that those who threw a Downing Street party the night before the late Queen sat alone at her husband's funeral will now receive awards from the King. If he's so tough, why didn't he block it?
Mr. Speaker, as I said, I and the government follow due process and convention. Prime Ministers of both parties have always upheld the convention of non-interference on political honours. My predecessors may not have agreed with Labour's choices of Tom Watson or Shami Chakrabarti, but the same precedent, Mr. Speaker, the same precedent stood then as it does now, and I'd expect a knight like him to understand that.
I think we will have more if we carry on. It'll be more outside rather than here. Keir Starmer.
Honour should be for public service, not Tory cronies.
So then, Ava, were you expecting Keir Starmer to talk about what he spoke about today? Peerages, honours? Are you surprised?
Peerages and honours, bang on, because Keir Starmer tends to go for quite Westminster-centric stories. Despite Labour's effort to look like they are representing the whole country, they do go for the Twitter clip. I'm sorry, they do. The ultimate Twitter clip today was Starmer saying honours should be for public service, not for Tory cronies. Now, that even made it onto my timeline, just to tell you how well that cut-through went.
The most plugged in,
Yeah.
most online Westminster insider.
No, I don't know. I enjoy it just as much as I enjoy football.
Stop lying about your interests.
Everton home and away. When he said that, it's for public service, not Tory cronies. What does he think the staff in Downing Street are doing?
Yeah, and I also think that it's kind of getting a bit convoluted, right? So sort of kind of denigrate. I understand that the list of staff who have been, nominated for a peerage, it's questionable. That's Charlotte Owen, for one, very young. It's questionable how long she actually spent as a special advisor in Downing Street. However, is it helpful to keep feeding into this narrative that we've got a big problem with the blob? We've got a big problem with the civil service and the people who work in and around Whitehall, because what you're essentially doing is passing the buck from the people at the top who might act in a heinous manner, and you're accusing these no name, no face people who work really hard of bringing down the country.
Yeah, first of all, I should say I know nothing about Charlotte Owen. First time I heard of her was this week when she was announced that she was getting a peerage, and loads of people complaining that she's young. I don't have a problem with the fact that she's young. It really doesn't bother me. If you're
what bothers you then about it? If it's not
nothing particularly bothers me.
It doesn't bother you
that she gets a peerage. No,
yeah.
She worked in Downing Street during a fucking plague.
Well,
fair enough. Have a peerage. Enjoy it.
I think that's quite a low barrier for a peerage.
Working in Downing Street. You get a job in there. Go on.
Okay. Fine.
No, you think it's a low barrier?
I think it's
running the country.
Charlotte Owen wasn't running the country.
She was part of the apparatus of government.
But so were like tons of people. I think there's like people who there's lower honours. I don't necessarily disagree with her getting an honour.
They get a good pension, don't they? So that should be enough.
Like should she get but then also should she get the £100 a day for the rest of her life for working for a disputed amount of time in Downing Street?
Do you think the Lords should not be paid for the work that they do?
I don't think she should be one. I think the Lords are maybe entitled to that money. It's a lot of money. And so maybe the barrier to entry should be higher than having worked in Downing Street for a disputed amount of time.
What's disputed about the amount of time she worked there for?
Well, the issue is that so she's put down certain dates that she was working there. And, well, there's not a lot of evidence that she was actually working there on those dates. Do you know how you kind of blur the lines a little bit? Because you're not quite... Like when you apply for a new job and it's like, what dates? And you're like... It's probably like July to July. And it's that, except she worked there like February to April, hypothetically.
Are you admitting fabricating the CV that you showed me?
How can I fabricate the CV when you actually did, like, you knew I was working there? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I don't know why I got so irate there.
Because it sounds like you did fabricate your CV. How dare you question the integrity of my CV?
Yeah. I didn't even think I gave one in.
No,
I think you just made me do a heinous project. Oh, it was so boring.
What was the project?
If you ever want to apply to Joe, look forward to Ollie setting you a thankless task as a way of vetting whether you can work.
What was your project?
Did you not have to do a project?
I did a project, but mine was interesting.
Oh, I actually don't know what mine was. I think I wrote something. Anyway, it was probably dog shit because it never got published. No, look, I'll tell you. So I was actually speaking to a couple of people in and around the Charlotte Owen situation. So the anger is actually coming from Nadine Dorries. She is the one allegedly who was briefing this all out.
That could be like a ticker on like the news channels for the next 3 days. Nadine Dorries is angry.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, she's not happy about it.
Steaming. No, so yeah, allegedly it's her who's really upset about it. And so she also apparently thinks that Charlotte Owen may have been part of the plot to not allow her peerage. And so that's where a lot of this anger comes from.
But does that just like turn into like outright conspiracy? As in, why would there be like Nadine Dorries isn't so like malignant a figure, doesn't have enough power or cultural cash for the entire like mechanism of the state to stop her getting into the House of Lords. I think that's.
I want to disagree. I want to disagree with you. I think that she was integral to Boris Johnson's premiership. I think that she commanded the backbench in a way only that, Priti Patel did, in a way that we now look at Suella Braverman and say that she's doing.
She was his main outrider, wasn't she? Her and Jacob Rees-Mogg, yeah.
She would go on and defend him to absolutely no end. And I think that the problem there is if you're going to do a really simple reading of it, Boris Johnson is now poisonous. Anything attached to Boris Johnson we don't want sticking around like a bad smell, therefore we don't want her in the House of Lords, would be the cynical view of it.
He started that clip by saying bills are soaring, people are unable to afford their weekly shop, their mortgage rates are increasing, but the Tory party's busy arguing with itself about honours, and then proceeded to spend 6 questions arguing with Rishi Sunak about honours. And I mean, we're talking about it now. I mean, does it just? There's a hint of this that for me just feels like I don't give a shit.
Well, I'll add to you another reason why that point was redundant, and it's because this week, this was never confirmed, but it was thought that Starmer would put down a motion added on. So Boris Johnson was going to go to the Privileges Committee, would be presented to the House of Commons, and they'd vote on it. Yep. They were going to add a motion to ban Boris Johnson from standing as an MP ever again. Now, you can't argue that certain stories are Westminster bubble stories if you are part of the bubble fueling process, It's like the house is on fire and Keir Starmer's outside going, who the hell did this? And he's holding like a torch, of fire plumes.
I guess the final thing I'd say about it as well, I don't know if it's particularly clever for a Knight of the Realm to be like waging war on the honours system. I just don't get it.
Yeah, but it's different when Keir Starmer has has that attached
It's
to it.
different for him.
Because he was the son of a man who owned a tool-making factory. So you need to...
Again, opening that can of worms.
I actually kind of disagree because he gives his own defence, and if you believe in the honours system, then I think what he says is right. Honours should be
For public
service, and he got it for being
like
director.
working in a public organisation, like public prosecution, director of public prosecutions at CPS, or working in Downing Street.
There's something, but
where the
again,
government
being
operates.
the director of public prosecutions is not the same as working in.
I didn't say they were the same.
Finish him, Ollie.
They're both.
You're
they're
making
both,
the same argument.
They're both examples of public service.
But there should be a barrier. There's
I
a
actually
gulf
think
between
I'm
those
actually going to go
things.
further and say that I think the advisors, the people who aren't the face of government, deserve that kind of recognition to a degree
To
that's
be a member of the
higher
House of Lords.
than the politicians do. Yeah.
To be a
Why-
member of the House of Lords.
Yeah, what do you mean a House of
No,
Lords?
okay,
What, in the same
look.
fucking building as the rest of them?
But they're legislators. It's not just being like, it's not just an honour. They get a point in like making laws for
What
the
do you
country.
think she was doing in Downing Street, Ed?
I think working in the executive is pretty good experience to set you up for a little stint in the
She
legislature.
barely worked there, and then she gets to do it forever. Why are you both okay with this?
The Lords aren't going to shag you, Ed.
No, look, but you know, I have some weird views about the House of Lords actually. But
Yeah, fucking clearly.
No, this is not one of them. This is not one of them, Ed. This is not one of them. I don't know. I think it's fine. I think it's all right. I don't care.
Yeah.
Let her go and sit in there.
Oh, he's
Lord,
drunk.
Lord.
Yeah. Ollie,
This is his fifth beer.
Don't listen to a word that man says.
you know, like when men get older, they just start relaxing. That's you now that you're married. You've gone like,
I
you
don't
know
give a
what?
shit
I'm
anymore.
sitting back. I've got what I wanted.
Yeah.
I'm now going to vote Tory.
No, I think
Eat
it's.
brioche.
I do like brioche, to be fair. I think it's just it's good to point out when Ed's wrong. Should we move on to the next bit?
Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, the truth is the country is paying the price of this endless cycle of chaos and distraction. The Tory economic crash means that millions of mortgage holders will pay thousands of pounds more next year. And the blame lies squarely at the door of a government more focused on the internal wars of the Tory party than the needs of the country. Does he not think that those responsible should hang their heads in shame?
Mr. Speaker, as I said right at the beginning of the session, our number one economic priority is to reduce inflation so that we can restrain the increase in interest rates. But one thing we know that we need to do that is to reduce our borrowing and debt, Mr. Speaker. That's how we will bring interest and mortgage rates down. But last week, what did we see? Labour confusion with the Shadow Chancellor attempting to water down their plans to borrow £28 billion more a year. But she was promptly overruled by the Shadow Energy Secretary, the former leader, who said that they were 100% not abandoning their pledge. It really looks like Labour's offer never changes. It's uncontrolled borrowing and more chaos with Ed Miliband.
Keir Starmer again talking about the economic crash, millions of mortgage holders, thousands of pounds more, etc., etc. And then this is actually kind of interesting the way Sunak comes back and talks about the Ed Miliband stuff.
Is it, or is it just a quick jibe? I think the mortgages stuff is really interesting. So at the moment, the way that mortgage advisors are working, it's perilous. And basically, the moment that they've called up their client and they've said, like, okay, I can get you a new fixed rate, by the time they go to key in the information and the application, the fixed rate is gone. The banks are pulling rates to no end. And that is because they literally cannot foresee into the future. They cannot tell you how much money you can borrow for a certain amount.
Yeah.
Because the economy is so, I was going to say a rude word.
We never say those on this podcast.
What word are you going to say? We'll bleep it.
I was going to say cunted.
Nice. Not gonna
We'll
get
say
it.
it was, okay, the economy is so Ed Campbelled.
What the hell?
You're getting it today.
Yeah, what the
You're
fuck?
getting it today, bro. What was I going to say? What's really interesting for me about this is if you look at the economic indicators that during the Liz Truss premiership were like the death knell of her time as Prime Minister. So 5 and 10 year gilt yields, which in turn started to overheat the economy and looked like there's going to be a run on pensions. More banks and mortgage lenders pulling their products from the markets. Those gilt yields are approaching the same level that they were at when Liz Truss was Prime Minister. And for whatever reason, it feels the media is less sort of frenzied it feels like there's less of a state of crisis. But actually, the economy is actually kind of heading in a very similar direction.
Well, can I give you a tidbit that's going to really back up what you've just said?
Please, Ava.
So,
it's you and me versus Ed on this fucking thing.
Yeah.
Support me.
I'm going to come out swinging.
This is a coalition.
so 2 separate Tory MPs have told me the economy is far worse than it was under Liz Truss's premiership. He was like, both of them told me, I've given it away. 2 of them.
Oh, we find out.
It's in a far worse state than it was under Liz Truss, and that's because we are now in a point where it's sticking, and it's just not moving anywhere. But under Liz Truss, what their argument was, they needed to get rid of her, and her crashing the market was actually just a fantastic vehicle to remove her as the Conservative leader, rather than them removing her because she Ed Campbelled the economy.
I might walk.
No, stay. Say something.
Stop using my name as a synonym for cunt. I think, is that because they see Sunak as a much more serious candidate than Truss? Is it just like optics at this point? If the outcome is the same, then you have a hoodie-wearing technocratic bro riding a peloton.
Yeah.
To like, I don't know. Is it just an optics thing? They think Sunak's a better chance for the next election.
Well, it's also kind of what one of them said to me was actually extremely contentious, which was the lack of faith, basically, that they have in the people who could vote in the leadership elections, in that electorate. And it all came down to racism, in their opinion. So what they were saying was the sort of people that are members of the Conservative Association, or the Conservative Party, are the typical racist, like, white man, right? But if you took Rishi Sunak to the country, he'd much more likely win an election compared to Liz Truss, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's that argument, isn't it? I mean, you know the Tory members better than any of us here, I would say. And I feel like we may have said this before, but the members always are more extreme than the parliamentary MPs, you know?
Far more right-wing than... It's like they're almost at odds with each other. I think there's like... I think probably in every party...
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely true in Labour.
There's a sense of like the membership is at odds with the parliamentary Labour Party, and I think that the MPs see themselves as the stewards of an old tradition which can see themselves kind of out of step with the membership as the membership is developing. I think that might be interesting with the right going forward is if the members of the Conservative Party turn to like a more modern, newer right-wing approach like we saw at the National Conservative Conference. The Parliamentary Conservative Party would be so out of step with that, and there would be probably deselections, etc., instilling perhaps a whole new national conservative movement within the Conservative Party.
I think it's far more likely that they're going to make space for a load of millennials. I actually do. You can listen to the interview I did yesterday with Bima Falami, but I thought everything he said actually made a lot of sense to me. There's this huge gap at the moment. People, ages between like 29 and 40 who really want to become part of the asset class, really want to own a home, want to be able to lease a car, and they can't. And if the Conservatives start catering to that lot, I reckon they're all going to go in and start being young Tories. What'd be worse?
I wonder though, is the brand like? I think the brand might be too toxic. I think that because when you go to Conservative Party conference, it does like that proposition would appeal to someone like me. It doesn't look that fun, if that makes sense. Like it doesn't look. I think to be honest, becoming a member of a political party doesn't seem that fun. Like going to like weekends in cities and arguing with people about
wrong.
So,
but this is you all over because you don't enjoy Labour conference, and I just think you are completely wrong.
That was convincing.
I love Labour conference. It's so much fun. There's so many young men in suits that I love speaking to, and they all look relaxed and at ease. And
with themselves.
With themselves, and the Wi-Fi is always good, and it's not boring at all.
I got really ill at the Labour conference. I think I drank too much on the first night.
That's different from being ill.
Yeah, I love it.
You told me you were ill.
I did become ill because I was still ill like 2-3 days later. No, I was just. I think I caught a cold from drinking. Shut up.
What was I funny? I was going to add something there. Oh yeah, about this. Yeah, the millennials thing. I agree. I think that demographic is incredibly up for grabs. It's not baked in to the Labour Party's vote that those people. I don't think the Labour Party can wait for a general election and then just be like, you guys are going to vote for us because you've got nothing else.
But then I don't think the Conservative Party is mobile enough or willing to, because they do that because their whole appeal to the older vote who will vote for them forever is you get everything, and as a result the young get nothing, and they're not going to. The old people are going to die. They've got a finite amount of time to have this built-in base.
Yeah, I kind of see the Tory party as much more sort of chameleonic. I think the reason it's sort of the most successful political party in Western European democracy is because it does constantly reinvent itself. There is obviously a tension between their current base, the older voters, and then the younger people that we're talking about, and then potentially winning those votes, because for those people to be able to afford houses, it depreciates the value of the assets of the elderly people that own them. So yes, there is a tension there.
Yeah, that's one thing he was quite inconsistent on yesterday, Bim, was, that there is, he was saying we need to increase supply because that makes it better for everyone. It's like, well, it doesn't make it better for the people who are already living there and the landlords that are, cashing in on all of this. Like, surely listen, if you just bought a £500,000 property and then they put a load of affordable housing in that depreciates the value of yours, you'd go, are you gambling me?
Shut the fuck up. Look, I would piss off the unnamed member of the Joe team who's first become NIMBY in his home ownership days.
Shall we watch another clip?
Yeah.
Roll it.
I would just like to echo the sentiments of the Prime Minister and indeed the Leader of the Opposition in relation to the terrible incident in Nottingham, and indeed our thoughts are with all of those still reeling from the tragedy at Grenfell all these years later. Mr Speaker, during his ill-fated leadership bid late last summer, the Prime Minister warned of the perils of mortgage rate rises. Indeed, he stated, and I quote, "It's going to tip millions of people into misery, and it's going to mean we have absolutely no chance of winning the next election." Given that mortgage rates continue to rise, does he still agree with his own electoral analysis?
Oh, Stephen Flynn. I'm a Flinner.
Flinner.
I'm a Flinner. I like Stephen Flynn. I mean, to say nothing of the dumpster fire that is the political party which he is a part of. Regardless, I like Stephen Flynn. I think he's good. I think he's casual. I like his manner. I like the stuff he talks about.
Adrian Charles asked me the other day if he was still nice because he hasn't seen him since he had hair. I know. I couldn't imagine him with hair either.
I think he had hair when he first became an MP. It doesn't look right.
Did he actually?
Yeah.
Oh, my phone's on charge. Fuck.
Shall I look?
Yeah,
I'll find
please pull that shit up.
Because I like his big bald head. Look.
Oh no.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be leader with hair.
He's quite attractive, isn't he, without hair?
He's made a good decision there. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
free.
Well done, Stephen.
Should
we talk about what you said?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think we should. I mean, what do we think? He kind of did the same thing, right? Rising mortgage rates. Spoke about that, and then went for Brexit. I loved the Scotland's being shafted by Brexit.
You did like that. You actually shouted that across the office 3 times because I couldn't hear you. And you kept repeating it.
I liked it.
Brexit misery, Ava. Brexit.
I did. I mean, there was. It's like it's the big lie of the two main political parties, isn't it? That we're going to make Brexit work, or whatever the fuck Rishi Sunak's version of that is. You know, the economy's tanking. Where could we find an estimated 4% of GDP growth in the single market? What if you really wanted to solve the small boats crisis? We had an agreement with the EU that allowed us to return them to France. And I'm not saying that that's something that we should do, but I'm saying if that's a priority of your government, and that's one way you could fix it.
Yeah. Sudden huge spike in exports, maybe. Aberdeen oil, Scottish whiskey. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing's fucked.
Well, we don't need to bring the mood down.
Sorry.
People come here for a bit of reprieve, Ollie.
You two talk among yourselves.
We're gonna
sit here lonely and drink a pint for a bit.
We're gonna have a moment of silence and reflection on Brexit chaos.
You just get like Gina Miller crying.
Okay, next one. Let's roll the clip. I haven't seen this clip, so I don't know what this is about.
It's funny.
Okay. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah.
Ed, tell me what the hell that was all about.
So Philip Davis has a wee dig at ex-Prime Minister Boris Johnson when he talks about... so he makes the point, he said we should have been more conservative. If only he'd had a majority of 80 and been Prime Minister, he could have done something about it. Which is quite funny. But he begins that with like a dig at Boris Johnson, but then he asks... it's quite like a classic, like, it's like a Tory like bingo card of points. He talks about the nanny state, he talks about being more conservative, he talks about like the plague of the nanny state a couple of times, and then he asks Prime Minister, because he's talking about the end to buy one get one free meals as like a challenge to tackle obesity, and he asks Sunak to oppose it because of the fury of the pathetic nanny state or something like that.
Well, he can't, because Gary Sandbrook wouldn't want that.
He does eat big dinners.
He does.
Allegedly.
But then he asked Sunak, can I ask the Prime Minister if you will intervene in the spirit of conservatism like Boris Johnson is asking for? So he's like playing both sides of like slagging off Boris Johnson, but then using his messaging to get back on. It's an interesting approach from
It's
Philip.
quite exhausting, really, isn't it? Because like earlier, one of the MPs asked about his hospital, the St Helier Hospital in Sutton, if it's going to get funding, and I was quite like, "What? Are you actually asking about something important?
What's this? Local issues?
No, yeah. Wait.
Democratic representation?
Yeah, we're here for the shit banter."
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I get that. Every time I watch these sessions, I just think I'm struggling to find ways to describe how boring and uninteresting and terrible Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak's exchanges are. They have the charisma of this table. It is appalling. It's like watching two pieces of wood like slowly come into contact with each other. Like it's not even hard.
No.
It's not even like immovable object meets unstoppable force. It's like, I don't know, when like two things in the back of a car, you go around a corner and they kind of like roll into each other.
Oh, that's really good.
There we go. I got it in the end. Fucking got there.
Like a really slow slide.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
the Sainsbury's plastic bag. Just
Yeah,
like...
maybe a bottle of wine tips over out of one of them. Like that's
That's
what
too
happens.
sexy, isn't it?
It's a bit different.
Kettles. What was it? Rishi Sunak doesn't drink, but he throws kettles or something.
Haven't heard that one.
Cut that
He
bit
throws
out.
kettles.
Okay.
Like kettlebell.
Not over a pub. Anything else you want to say about Philip Davis?
No.
Okay.
No, actually, I don't know, but maybe you'd like to. And if so, email ollie.jugmore@joe.co.uk.
I didn't actually get any emails from the last episode. Definitely not containing any of the stuff that you encouraged people to send me in the last episode.
What did I encourage?
Dick pics.
God, I'm on fire lately.
Yeah, you are. Smashing them out the park.
You're trying to ruin me and Ollie's lives. You're just getting people to send him. Commit, I think, crimes by sending Ollie unsolicited dick pics.
Why don't we look, if you feel like that, why don't I show you some of the dick pics in my inbox while we're on here? And then...
Should we do that?
Yeah, it's really funny.
Okay, I can't find it. Here's one asking about my feet. Asking foot fetish related content in the future. They'd be interested in buying it. I'm feeling pressure about the time. Can you talk amongst yourselves about another topic?
Well, the next topic's about Pestminster. So I mean, maybe we should just nix this segment and visit it another time.
If you are interested in weird dicks, watch my video about the World Naked Bike Ride.
Good. Very good. Yeah, Ed was at the World Naked Bike Ride at the weekend. Ed, what did you see while you were there?
Lots of weird dicks.
Any normal dicks?
Some. It was about so it's like a protest about ostensibly about safe cycling. Protest against car culture. Essentially, just thousands of people cycle through cities around the world, completely naked. And on what it says it is a protest against car culture, or environmentalism, about body positivity. Well, you get the impression some guys are just there to fuck. It's just like some people just spoke to.
But they're in public.
Yeah, they're not fucking like. Well, I personally didn't see anyone shagging in public, but if you looked up the hashtag on Twitter, there were people getting hand jobs on bikes, and I don't. They have not
That's
been.
so funny.
They have not been verified on BBC Verify. So
We can't tell it.
Who could possibly say they've not been geolocated by BBC News? So who could possibly say?
Very good.
I posted that one. You can see the kind of like that's where the dick was.
So hairy. I
I told you they're all like really hairy with like a little dick poking out. A little cocktail sausage.
Should we talk about Westminster?
Feels wrong there.
Yeah, it does.
Sorry, have I brought down the mood?
No, you haven't at all.
Oh, here we go. I've got some now. You ready?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's a montage.
What?
It's like...
Wait, I haven't actually clicked view photo on this one yet, so should we give it a go together? Oh, there it is. We've seen it.
Oh, no.
Nice.
What do they hope to achieve?
I don't know. It's really not a very nice penis. Silence is very good for a podcast.
Yeah, sorry. If the lighting was better, would it make it less offensive?
The angle's very funny as well.
I thought that he did quite well in the first one, really. But then you did.
Also, he's sending like a semi.
Yeah, that's what I was going to
Like,
say that.
bros, post your dubs, not your L's.
Yeah.
Break up or get out. Don't waste my time.
You'd really have to
Front up.
thumb that one in.
I don't know if we can publish this. I don't know. I don't know. I think this has gone too far. I think it's gone too far. I don't know what I created. What is this? This is a monster. You can't put this on YouTube. Are you proud of yourselves?
I didn't see it. I think...
That's for the Patreon.
That's one of the funniest things I've ever heard.
Ava, the other week on one of these episodes of the podcast, you and I had a conversation about something that happened to you in one of the bars on the parliamentary estate. And there was a very public reaction to what you said. Some of it was public, some of it was private. Talking about the general culture in Westminster, how particularly, well, all people, but particularly young women, whether they feel safe on the parliamentary estate. Would you talk a little bit about sort of what's happened since you spoke about that on the podcast?
A lot of women have reached out to me and been speaking about similar experiences, and some experiences which are a lot worse. And the range of what I've been told about goes from touching all the way up to rape. And one of them that we're still looking, well, I'm still looking at or looking into more. I mean, one girl who's even reported it to the police, and the party just aren't taking it seriously at all. I'll leave it really loose because we'll keep it like. But I think the common thread throughout all of them, every woman that I've spoken to, has been that they also, I know it does happen to men as well. It's just that men haven't reached out to me.
Yeah.
But the women I've spoken to, the common thread is that they're frightened about going public with it. Because and what I mean by going public is speaking to, the whip, speaking to the Speaker of the House, speaking to anyone in Parliament, because it could eventually make the papers in a way that is very detrimental to the accuser's career. So it won't be, in their opinions, the person who's done it who'll get in trouble. It'll be them.
How does that... I'm interested in how that works, because they have the right to anonymity, surely.
But not really in that place.
Okay.
Because if you think about any of the other scandals that have come out, normally we do know who it is for weeks, months before a paper has got the right, the right evidence to actually put it out and go public with it. Especially if there's a police investigation involved, you really can't publish anything. But everyone inside that building knows. And then it just means that, like, say you work for one MP, the next MP won't hire you because they'll go, oh no, she said X about my friend, her old employer. I don't want any trouble. I don't want any issues. So I'd rather go for someone who hasn't had that happen to them.
Why, if you don't mind me asking, speaking about those emotions and how those women have felt about coming forward and speaking publicly, what was different in that for you? Why did you feel comfortable? Why were you able to speak up?
Well, I'm not employed by Parliament, am I?
Yeah.
And I don't work there every day. If I didn't want to be there one day, I would just come to this office. Hell. No, but so I don't have that kind of like that same pull. And also, it's Parliament's such an odd place because when you get the pass to go into Parliament, you're kind of like, I'm in this club. And then losing that pass would mean that you lose access to it. You lose access to like all of your old colleagues, your friends. Life goes on without you, and you get really worried about losing it, I can imagine. There was something else I wanted to say. Oh yeah, you only have to go through the comments that were on the post that we did about the last time that I spoke about it to see just swathes of people calling me a liar, calling me God knows what names, so many names. I don't care. Like, I mean, let's be honest, I've heard it all before. I say it to myself.
I hate myself.
Yeah. But if you are someone who doesn't have like, not that I have a profile, but if you don't have like a quote unquote profile and you're not used to receiving those sort of messages all the time, why would you put yourself in the harm's way of doing it? And so I genuinely think it's not until, it's going to sound ridiculous and almost like quite pipe dreamy, but until the public takes a stance, which is we are going to believe the victim rather than the accuser and not chastise the victim, no one is going to come forward.
Is there something that could be done at an institutional level? As in, the way you both talked about this on the previous time that you discussed this, that it just seems absurd that this is a place of work and that it's endemic to the culture. Is there any solutions? What can be done to get rid of this pretty horrific culture?
I think if you're going to be really extreme with it, I think there's a really big problem with the bars. I think that they are I think they're really bad. But I mean, like, it contributes to the sort of like, I mean, you wouldn't have lobby journalists if you didn't have the bars, because you get all of your stories by going to them and gossiping. But if you could eliminate that gossip culture, then firstly, people would be able to report sexual misconduct because it wouldn't be spoken about in the bar. And secondly, and this is horrendous, but you wouldn't have the opportunity to commit as many acts if there weren't so many social areas in the building. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'd be less keen to sort of label them as social. I think it's alcohol. No, I think it's.
You see, I was reticent to say it was alcohol.
Right? Why?
Because I don't like the idea that you kind of get a free pass. I know you'd never imply that, and I know that, but I don't like the idea that. And it's used all the time. So look at Neil Coyle, who racially abused one of the journalists. He went on an alcohol training course and he had the whip restored and he was allowed to continue operating as an MP. He managed to blame the alcohol. But it's not necessarily even like...
Well, it's not a defence in court.
No, but for some reason it's a defence here.
That's what I think is quite... When you mentioned reporting it to the Speaker and or the whip or whatever, and them failing to take action, it's the fact that they're having to take action at all beyond, I don't know, I think in any other company or setup or organisation, it would not be a question of, there wouldn't be a question of it. It's like there's too much power within this, it's like too much of a construct, there's too much power within this construct that has no real, it doesn't really exist outside of that building. It's like too much of a concentration of power.
But
almost.
It's also because the way that you're employed is if Ollie was the member of Parliament and I was his staffer and you were his office manager, you're our boss, our manager, our HR directive, everything, you know? So it would be like if you worked in a normal company and then you had to go to outsourced HR to report something. That's what it's like.
Yeah, it's almost like being at a startup or whatever where there's staff.
Yeah, and I point you towards what happened with Charlie Elphicke and Natalie Elphicke, the former and now current MP for Dover. Charlie Elphicke was accused of assaulting or harassing his staffer. The head of HR who you'd report it to was his wife.
Yeah, it's nuts.
I mean, how on earth was that ever going to get, heard?
Well, yeah, rotten to the core, and I expect we'll be hearing more from you on this story as the weeks and months go by. Ava Santina, harassment correspondent at PoliticsJOE. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me. Ed Campbell, the golden boy of PoliticsJOE. You have been over the course. You did such a good performance over that half-hour record.
Even though I disagreed with you fundamentally.
I loved it. We should do it more often. Thanks very much for watching. See you on the next one.